Hello and welcome to Johncanfixanything. Today I'm going to take on a very difficult project which involves replacing the water pump and all of the timing chain and components on a Mazda CX9. Now mine is a 2007 model. It's got about 175,000 miles on it. I've done it once before. Now I'm getting ready to do it for the second time. So if you want to know how to put all of this into your Mazda CX9, then stay tuned. This video will also work for your Ford Edge and also for some of your Lincoln MK models as well. The engine, the 3.5 and 3.7s are pretty much identical, and you're going to be able to use this video for that as well. Before we get started, I want to caution you that this is not an easy project. If you are not comfortable with tools and do not have some mechanical savvy, do not take this project on, because you will probably fail with this project. It's not easy. I will lay it out step by step the very best I can. I'll give you all the specifications as I go, and I'll show you what you need to do, but it's a difficult project, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Now you're going to need an extensive amount of parts for this project, and you might as well get them now, because once you get into the engine, you're going to need them all. Okay, so I recommend you go ahead and order your new water pump. I order separate seals with it, because the ones that come with it are pretty cheap and I don't like them. So I order a different type that I got. They're from Felpro, and you can see they're more form-fitted, and they go in and they just hold their form a lot better. I'll put those links, and there's going to be a lot of links on this video, and I may split this video into several sections because I think it's going to get pretty long. But anyway, I'll put links to this and to each type of, if it needs to be a seal or whatever it is. I bought this entire this is an entire kit which came with all the guides, all the timing chains, the new timing sprocket, all the new tensioners. It came basically with everything. You're going to need a new drive belt. You're going to need a new alternator belt, which is this belt is not adjustable. It's a belt that has no adjustment, so you can't take things loose and take it off. So you're basically going to have to cut this belt off and then put it back on with a belt tool. Okay, you're going to need to do a couple of different things to even get to this. Okay, so you're going to be working on the side of the engine, the passenger side of the engine, and you're going to be working on the top of the engine. Okay, when you go on the side, you're going to start on the top, and you're going to work your way to the side. You're going to have to take all your fluids out. You're going to take your oil out. You're going to take your water out of your radiator. Get all that stuff done first. You know, make sure you use all the proper safety tools. Make sure you lift the vehicle up, put it on jack stands, take the tire off. You're going to need that room. I'm taking the strut off. I'm taking the actual wheel assembly out, so I can get to that the side of that engine, or the front of the engine, because it's a side-mounted engine. But there's a kit. I'll put that in the description. This is a really good kit. I've used it before. It comes basically with all the chains. The chains have the actual marking chains on them. As we get into the video, I'm going to show you how to make sure you line it up timing wise, because the 3.5 and the 3.7 liters, as you turn that engine, it's not a single turn takes it back to dead center. It takes multiple turns. So you need to know what that looks like and where to start with that, with the timing on that engine. And I've actually got a couple tools I'll recommend for you as well. But on the top of the engine, you're going to need new gaskets for the top. When you take the air intake off, you're going to need new air intake. You're going to need new ones for the valve covers. The valve covers have to come off to get to the front of the timing chain cover. There's a little lip there on the side of the engine, and the valve covers have to come off so that that front timing chain cover can come off as well. And then you're going to need a new seal for that. There are several things you're going to need to do. While you're in there, you know, if you're trying to just change the water pump, forget about it. You need to change change both. If you're going to change the timing chains, change the water pump. It's an internal water pump. It goes right along with this timing chain. So this actually drives off of the timing chain. They're not separate. If you're going to do one, you need to do the other, and you need to do them completely. So don't skimp on this, or it will end up costing you a lot more money than what all of these parts will cost you, and these parts aren't cheap. But if you go to your local Mazda dealer and you try to have this done, you're probably talking $1,500 to $2,000 to get it done. So there is a lot of money to be saved. But before you start this project, go through the video completely. However many videos I make, it may be 2 or 3, I don't know. It depends on how long this gets. But look at it, look at all the parts that are required, look at all the tools that are required. In just a minute, I'll show you a couple of the specialty tools that you just absolutely have to have before you start this project. But again, I want to caution you, if you are not an accomplished mechanic and feel comfortable with what you're doing, do not take on this project. All right? So I'll be right back. Okay, I want to go over a couple things before we get started. First of all, safety. Once again, I say it several times during the video, but I mean it. Make sure you put the vehicle up on jack stands. Make sure they're secure. Make sure you're using safety glasses when you're underneath, especially, and over the top. You're going to be dealing with, you know, a lot of crud and different things going to be falling down off the engine. You're going to be working with a lot of torque nuts and bolts. Make sure you're wearing your safety glasses. I wear some type of gloves, but then when I get into it, sometimes I move to rubber gloves. Anyway, I want to talk about a couple of specialty tools that I highly recommend. You can probably do this job without them, but I don't think you can do the job accurately without these. So I would recommend you go ahead and buy them, or try to, you know, the torque wrench, you can just go rent it at your local auto parts store. I'm not so sure about these two. Now, the Mazda 3.5 and 3.7 are dual overhead cam engines. So you have 2 cams and they're overheads. And then, you know, the timing belt goes through the 2 cams, and, you know, they got 2 little, you know, two small chains for the cams, and then your big chain, right, which runs through the water pump. Now, these tools, I think they're about $30. I'll put the link below with all the other. You're going to have a ton of links in these. But these tools go on the top of those cams shafts, and they hold those cam shafts in the exact place with your main shaft, so that you don't get the timing out on that dual overhead cam engine system. Because if you do, you're done, and nothing's going to work right, and your valves are going to go up and hit your top of your pistons, and you're just going to completely ruin your engine. So even though these are $30-something, whatever they are, I recommend you buy these, or you find them, you rent them, whatever the case may be. Don't know that I would take this project on without these. And I definitely wouldn't take the project on without a really good torque wrench. It doesn't take the big one. 3/8 is what I'm going to use, and it'll do practically everything on this project. But it needs to be a good one. It needs to be one that's easy to set and easy to control. There's a lot of torques when you're going back and putting all the new parts on. There's a lot of smaller bolts that are, you know, a lot of them are 8mm, and they're really small, and you don't want to break those off or strip them out. So a good torque wrench is really important. I do recommend you buy these brackets for holding the dual overhead cams in place. I do recommend that. Now, you're going to need Permatex. I use the Ultra Gray. You're going to need that for the water pump. You're going to need a really good set of sockets. You're going to need all of your regular wrenches. You're going to need some close-in, box ends. There's a lot of tight in and outs on these bolts that we're going to have to take off. You may need a breaker bar because the motor mount has to come off on the front. The motor mount covers the timing chain cover, and you kind of got to work your way down through the engine. You'll see it as we go along in the video. But a good set of tools all the way around. Like I said, get a couple cans of brake clean for your cleaning, WD-40 to keep lubed, and a couple of parts that I forgot is when you go into the top of the engine and you start taking everything apart, you're going to be taking out these on your plugs, and while you're doing this whole process, change your plugs out, and I would change the coils out as well. You don't have to change the coils out, but if you're going to do this much work, I would change these coils out as well. I'm even going to do the thermostat because it's on the other side and it's going to be accessible, even though I don't show it here. But I'm going to do everything on the top of that engine, because you're literally going to take everything off of the top of that engine, and you're going to be looking down, and you're going to be seeing the two dual overhead cams, and you're going to be seeing the top of the engine. So you're going to be right there on everything. And so if I were you, I'd go ahead and get you another set of spark plugs. I'd go ahead and get a new set of coils, and when you get everything put back together again, I'd put these in, because you wouldn't want to do this whole project and then have a fouled plug or a coil that goes bad. So I would go ahead and recommend that as well. So as I get into the video, I will talk to you about all the tools I need. I'll talk to you about torques when I'm putting everything back together again, so you can write everything down and know what to torque it. It's really important on the internals of the engine that you torque everything properly, so don't do it by hand and don't guess, or you'll have something come loose in the engine later. So that's a pretty good prelude to what's going to happen. This is going to be a lengthy video. Again, I will probably break it into a few parts. If you have any questions, please leave them in the remarks, and we'll get on with the project. All right, so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to attack this from two different directions. One, we're going to have to take the top part of the engine down all the way to the valve covers, and we're going to have to take the valve covers off. The reason you have to do that is to get to the front, the timing cover, which is underneath the passenger side wheel well. You've got to take the top part loose first. So we're going to have to pretty much strip this down and get down to the covers, the valve covers. We're going to pop both valve covers off, and then we're going to have to go down underneath, and I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So we're going to start here on top, and I'm going to go ahead and start pulling everything off here and getting us some room to work. And where we're going is right down in here, which there's not a lot of room down there, but there is enough room once we get everything cleared off to do the job we're going to try to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and start taking this stuff off, clearing up all the hoses that I can without going crazy on it, and I'm going to put rags in as I go, and we'll go from there. I ended up having to take the battery box out to get to the next one. Okay, once you get this off, this is off the back of the air hose. This just pulls right out, and this goes on the other side of the air hose, and it's just a thumb clip right there, and there's a thumb clip down here. This has got to come off anyway, because you're gonna, well, I guess you could leave it on if you wanted to, but I usually take it off to make more room. Get that out of the way. Okay, so now you got to get this ready to go. There's a bolt underneath this throttle body right here, and there's a bolt back in the back there. I'll show it to you real quick. If you've got a long extension, yeah, that'll get it. You just take it right in here, right back behind there, and it's right in underneath. You can barely see it. Okay, then there's one right in underneath the throttle body right here. So make sure you get those. You need to disconnect this clip right here on the throttle body. It's a push in, and pop that off. Then I usually go ahead and take these two screws loose right here on this vacuum pump. I don't know what type of vacuum system it is, but I always just take this screw off, and there's a screw off right behind it. I take those two screws off and move this off to the side, and it gives you a lot more room to pull that plenum off, because that plenum's got to kind of come through this area right here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a wrench and do that real quick. Magnet available, little hand magnet, because you know, you get these things loose and you don't want them to fall. Just take that. You can actually just work it right up here. It'll twist. Get that out of the way. That'll give you room to get this out when it gets loose. And this is the one we're going. We're going to this rail right here. So now you got 6 bolts. 2 here, 3, 4, 5, 6. And they're I believe they're 10 millimeter. I'll tell you in a second. I think they're 10 millimeters. No, they're 8 millimeter. And these are 79 to 101 inch-pounds. So remember that when you're torquing them back up. And I've never gotten to the 101. Mine, I usually use about 92, 93 pounds, and that's about all. You will need a new set of gaskets for this plenum. You don't want to reuse those old gaskets. You can, but I don't recommend it. Gaskets are cheap. I think they run, I want to remember, 15 bucks a set. And this is what the set looks like right there. I get them off of Amazon. MS19557 is the Ford number. It's made by Molly. So get those. Then get you a set of new injectors. Wherever you want to get those injectors from, but you need a new set. Make sure they got both the O-rings on them. You'll definitely need that. You need 6 of them. And if you haven't done your spark plugs, you might as well do them while you're in here, because you're going to have this plenum off. So get you a set of spark plugs, put them in while you're at it, because you're going to be, that back side's going to be accessible. And normally it will never be. You'll only have access to these front 3. So if you need to change your spark plugs, now it's going to be a good time to do that. This center bolt here, this is a long bolt, the only long bolt out of the group right there. Okay, so I got all those off now. They're all the same, except for the one long one. Okay, now here's the tricky part, and I'll show as best I can this back area back here. Right there where my finger is, hard for you to see it, there is a hose there, and it goes down into this cover right here. Okay, you can pull that hose up. It doesn't have anything on the end of it, on the other end, so you can pull that hose straight up. Then once you pull that hose up, right underneath that, you're just going to have to feel for it. There's an actual electric connector right underneath that. It's very simple to get off. All you have to do is press it on each side and pull it off. That connector has to be off before you pull the plenum. And I'll show it to you once I get the plenum off, and you can kind of see what it looks like and how it goes. But I mean, the first time I did this, I had no idea and couldn't get anything off, and I'm like, what the heck's going on? Found out the hard way. So, you know, just so you don't have to. Pull that hose off. Get this connector off here. Okay. This plenum will come off straight back, just like this. Okay, now you got access to your fuel rail, and show you that back part. These are the rings you're going to change out. This is that back hose right here, and right underneath it, that's the connector. And then you'll see the connector and the hose, that's where they belong right there. So there's your intake for the engine. We're going to be able to get to the rest of the engine. I'm going to go ahead and get the injector lines and stuff clipped off, and go ahead and get all of the coil packs off. And I want to talk about the coil packs too, because those ones with the red clips break off all the time. The Ford, Mazda are notorious for that. So what I do is I try to keep them intact. You can't buy them separately. You have to buy the whole clip and then wire it in. So I don't do that. So what I do is I end up snuggling them up like that, and then I put a zip tie on them, and that's what most of us do, is put that zip tie on. So I'm going to get some stuff into the intake, get some rags in there, and then I'll be back. I got to find that hose too. Okay, when you're getting ready to take the coil packs off, they're 8mm. Again, I was telling you about the red clips. Two of these were loose when I was taking them off, probably part of my P code. Then you got the cam sensor there. It's a little snap right there. You push on the end of it, pull that off. I'm going to go ahead and take a little time and go ahead and cut these off, because that entire cable system needs to come off so that you can get to the valve cover. And I want to get this main cable pulled over to the side. This main cable here, I want that laid over. So I'm going to spend some time cutting everything free and getting that moved over so we can get at those valve covers. So make sure you stuff your intake. You don't want to get any dirt in there. We'll go ahead and get on with this, and I'll be back. There's really nothing special about it, but just take your time. There are a lot of clips and different things. On the back, you got the cam sensors, well, the same type, and I'm going to have to work all of these off with the clips in the back, so it's going to take me a little time. And I got some broken clips back there that I found that I'm going to have to replace, so I'm going to do that and then I'll be back. Alright, I've got everything cleaned up around the back valve cover. The valve cover bolts are 10mm. Takes a deep well. You probably want to go with a 3/8 ratchet. They have rubber buffers underneath them. You can reuse them, and I'll give you a count on them here shortly. I'll tell you how many there are. I can tell you that there's 5 in the front, and I believe there's 5 in the back. I know there's one right behind this cam sensor, because I can feel it. And then I know there's one down here on the corner, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I'd say there's a total of 10. But I'm going to go ahead and I'll get all these broken loose, and then I'll be back and show you how many there are. I think I might even have a schematic for these. And when we go back to putting them back on, I'll give you the torque specifications as well. Okay, I have got what I believe is all the bolts loose. These bolts are kind of have little locking rings on them, so they won't come all the way out. But I've loosened every one of them. There was one special on the back right where that lifting lug is right there, and it didn't have the same top on it as the others did. Everything else looked just like that, so I'm ready to go ahead and see if I can gently pry this up. Okay, it's a real tight fit around that cam sensor. So you got to take a little smaller pry bar and work that back corner out. Once you get that up above the cam sensor, then you should be able to just pull it right off. Okay, so this is what it looks like off. So there's the special one in the back. It's just a regular flathead. So you got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. And right around that cam sensor, you're going to have to work this edge right here. You're going to have to work that edge right there to get that off. Okay? And then there's the inside of it. And of course the seal stayed on the head. And I'm going to replace it, put a new one on. I'm going to replace these seals as well. I'm going to replace all these seals. Just clean it up good. It doesn't look bad at all, actually. It looks very, very clean. So that's the first one. Let me go ahead and set this down. I'll take my camera and show you a little bit in here. Okay. There's the cam sensor, and that's the one you got to work off nice and easy. The gasket here is still on. I'm going to take that off, clean that all up, but the actual timing chain and everything actually looks really, really good. I've only used Mobile One in this since the day I bought it, so it's got 175,000 miles on it. Definitely need to be done. I'm happy I went ahead and pulled it off so I can go ahead and get that done. Let's see if we can feel any. No, it didn't feel like there's, the chain looks like it's loose, but with 185,000 miles, I'm going to go ahead and do it. I've actually got the tool as well that holds these cams in place when we're making the chain change. And I'll show you those two tools. They fit right over in these slots right here when you've got the timing right. So we'll make sure we do that. So anyway, there was one little line that I couldn't get off, and I moved it over to the side, this line right here. So other than that, everything came off, and now I'm going to go ahead and get on this front and get these knocked out. Okay, I'm ready to get the last valve cover off. So if you want to get this cable out of the way, this main cable, it's a bear. Okay, and you've got to go down and get these couplings off of the alternator. This one specifically is very difficult to get off. Then underneath that, this little clip-on cable goes to the air conditioning unit down below it. Okay, so it is very, very difficult to get all these off, but you really do need it so that you can get this engine nice and clear, not only to get the valve cover off, but you're going to want to work down in here. We're going to have to take this motor mount off and several other things. So really, to do it, you really need to get that off, but take your time. It's a bear. You're going to get frustrated, but in the end, you're going to need to take it off. So anyway, I've got the bolts all loosened up. I've got everything off. I set my injector, not my injector, but my coil line is separate. So I set it off to the side, and I believe I've got enough room to get the head off without trying to move that back. And I'm going to try it and see if it works. So I'm going to go ahead. See if I can get this to break loose. Okay, and remember, me pull this off. Remember right here, where in my hand, there we go. That's your cam sensor. That is really tight in there, okay? So you've got to work that out around that cam sensor. Otherwise, it's not going to want to come off. Everywhere else, it's okay. And when you pry it, you can pry it on this corner and hit that top there. You can pry it right here off of this and go under here. Okay, those are two good points. And on the lower side, I don't think you're going to need to. I think it's going to be okay. So let me go ahead and see if I can get that pulled off, and I'm going to call it a night. Okay, so just take a small pry bar. This is the one that I used, and just work right around this edge, right around this, because this is really tight where that cam sensor is. Okay, so you need to work that loose right there. All the rest of them seem to come out pretty easy. I don't really see any issues with it. And it looks pretty clean inside as well, but I'm going to change all the seals and everything. And there's the A-bank. Actually looks pretty clean. I'm going to strip that down, put a new seal on it. Now you can see that I'll be able to go ahead and get to the timing cover next. So that's what I'm going to work on tomorrow. I'm going to have to take off that motor mount, that bracket, this small bracket here, and this motor mount. I have to jack up the bottom of the oil pan and take the weight off of it and get that off the motor mount. But anyway, that's a pretty good start for today, so we'll see you again tomorrow.